heard about web components before. So that's pretty good then. So we still have about 2 minutes, and then I'll start. But just what this talk will be, I'm going to do like 5 to 10 minutes of slides, introduction, background. Then we are actually going to build a custom element from scratch with like actually live coding. So I'm going to be up here coding. That'll be fun. It's going to be like, whew. And typing at a podium as an awkward angle, I don't recommend it as like a desk for your normal setup. And then after that, there will be some takeaways about when you should use custom elements versus when you should use a library or framework. So yeah, just in case you want to leave and go to another talk, there's still time. But Chuck Norris would be very angry at you if you did. Let's kick Chuck again. Yeah. Chuck Norris is great. OK, 1 minute. I do take questions. So actually, during the slides in the very beginning, that's actually my second slide, which is, do you take questions? So please hold your questions until the live coding portion. The beginning is like an introduction. But during the live coding, please ask lots of questions, because I'm trying to explain like the APIs behind web components, and I really want you to have an understanding of what they mean. So if there's anything that's not clear, ask, and then I will do my best to explain it, or I will Google it later to get an actual answer. So yeah, I might as well just start now, since we got the questions thing. And so it is 2:15. Hi, I'm Chris Lorenzo. This is Intro to Web Components. If you have any questions, please ask them during the live coding portion of it. It'll be a lot of fun. I work at a company called Comcast. How many people here have heard of Comcast? OK, so this is a Comcast market down here then? You basically buy internet. So they're one of the largest providers of internet. They also do telephone service, cable provider. It's a great company to work for. I've been there for 11 years, doing front-end development for a long time. I really like it. They just built a new technology center in Philadelphia. So I came from Philadelphia. I drove like 4.5 hours to get down here. I hit no traffic coming down. I'm hoping to hit no traffic going back tomorrow morning. Wish me luck. And we're here to talk about web components. And basically, everyone in this room is using one of these frameworks, right? Anybody not using one of these frameworks? Let's do that. OK. The whole row. So you must all work together. Are you using no framework or? Aurelia? Oh yeah. That's a web component-based framework. So cool. Welcome to the talk. Regardless of what framework you're using today, you are basically writing components. And the reason why you're writing components is, if we look at the React documentation, I really like this quote. React is all about building reusable components. In fact, with React, the only thing you do is build components. Since they're so encapsulated, components make code reuse, testing, and separation of concerns easy. That's why components are great. And so all the frameworks are doing it. And now we have these native APIs in the browser that allow you to do the same thing without a framework. And that's what web components are about. They are a new set of APIs that allow you to create custom, reusable, encapsulated HTML tags on the web pages that are standards-based, that will work across any modern browser, and can be used with any JavaScript library or framework that works with HTML. So this is kind of like the spec definition of it. And there are 4 specs. So web components is like the group name, but there are 4 sub-APIs that you can actually take advantage of. The first one is custom elements. Second is HTML imports. HTML imports is dead. You will not use this anymore. It is still part of the spec, but you use ES6 imports. And probably everybody's familiar with like import some function from library. That's like the new standard now. The template tag, you will probably never ever use this, but I will almost guarantee that your frameworks are using this under the hood. And then the shadow DOM. And it has to be said like that. You have to say it in like a deep voice, the shadow DOM. Does anybody see the movie The Shadow? It's like an old school movie. Yeah, I really love that. So creepy guy with the hat thing. So one of the big questions that you should probably ask is, can we even use these things? And that's a great question. I actually just took this screenshot this morning, which is really great, because I've been giving this talk for many years and talking about web components for many years. And now all modern browsers actually have these APIs available today. So Firefox actually just released Firefox 63 in October, which was last month, because now we're November 2nd. which has all these APIs. Edge is actually in the process of developing them. So it was one of the biggest jokes that I had was this slide where custom elements was under consideration, but it was the #1 voted for feature from Edge. And they finally said, oh, cool, we're going to start developing it. So Edge should hopefully have it by, I don't know, sometime next year, I would say. Maybe by the end of this year, but I doubt they're that quick. But they'll be implementing custom elements and Shadow DOM. So it will be available in all modern browsers, which is essentially 80% of traffic today, or 80% of browsers, it has it. And once Edge has it, it will be probably 81% of browser traffic will have it. Little joke there. It actually, Edge is like 4% of global traffic, which is really low. It's pretty sad. How many people have heard of Google Polymer? Oh, wow. Wow. Surprisingly, almost everyone has heard of Google Polymer. So that's great. I like to introduce Google Polymer as the Google Polymer project. A lot of people know it for the library that they produce, but there's a lot more to it than just the library. They are a team that was dedicated for pushing these new web component APIs and working with all the browser vendors to actually get them available in browsers today. And they produced the Google Polymer library to help you to write web components and also the polyfills so that you could do it when they first started in 2013. They also have the website webcomponents.org, which is a collection of web components that are available. All these components, you can go and download them and use them on your project regardless of framework that you are using. There's also collections of elements. One of the most popular collection is the Polymer elements, and they have iron elements and then paper elements. Paper elements implement the material design of stuff. So here are all the paper elements. You can actually build full websites just using paper elements. So you have paper dialog, paper tabs, paper buttons, paper fabs, paper toggles, and literally to get one of those things in, you just import it on the page, and then this is paper toggle. And it includes the styles, everything, and it's very easy to use. So that was a quick introduction to web components, and now we're actually going to go through the APIs and build a custom element. And the custom element that we're going to build is a toast. For those who don't know, a toast is that thing that pops up from the bottom of the screen. So I'm just going to demo that again. We're going to build this thing. And so I really want to emphasize the fact that this thing right now is just running, well, it's running in my web browser. It's an index.html page, and I just have it open from the file system. So I'm actually not even running a web server. And on this web page, I am loading the polyfill for IE11 and Edge browser, which doesn't have it. All the other browsers, everything will just work. I'm loading in my WC Toast definition, and then I have basically the styles that you see here. I think the main benefit of this is I'm not using a framework, and for third parties who want to use my toast, all they have to do is put the tag on there, WC Toast. And then they can set a duration attribute to say automatically dismiss after 5 seconds, and then they can put whatever content they want in there. And then I have a little styling to make one show up on the right and one to show up on the left. All right, so let's get started. Step 1. So the first thing that we want to look at is the definition for how to create a custom element. You use class. How many people, everyone's familiar with class syntax? If you're using React or anything, you're probably using class syntax. Here I'm creating my WC Toast. I'm extending the HTML element, which is a native node in the web browser. And you get certain lifecycle hooks defined by the API spec. So again, this is the browser doing all of this work. You have the class constructor. You have connected, which is when the component is added to the DOM. When it's disconnected is when it's removed from the DOM, pretty obvious. And then attribute change callback. Anytime an attribute changes, this function will be called to let you know that an attribute changed. And then lastly, you just tell the browser custom elements.define. Anytime you see this WC Toast tag, run this class definition with it. Okay, everyone can see it just fine in the back too? Okay, I got a thumbs up. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do the hello world of web components. And by hello world, I'm just going to reload the page here. We're just going to have hello world show up in this box. And normally what you would think you would do is you would go this.inner HTML equals hello world. This is the best part about typing live is shaky hands a little bit. And if you did that, it wouldn't work because, what is it? Custom elements cannot have children. And it's very sad that they can't have children. I have 2 children. That's more than enough children, but they're not allowed to have children in the constructor. And the reason for that is because you need to be able to do document.create element, which then it's like not in the DOM yet, so you can't create children yet. So what you want to do is whenever you want to modify the DOM, you do that in the connected callback. So in the connected callback, we'll do this dot inner HTML equals hello world. Come over here, reload. This is the hello world of custom elements. That is the majority of the API for custom elements. We'll look at attribute change callback later on in one of the later steps. But that's it. And I think that the beauty of it is now I have a WC Toast element that I can give someone, and it will run my JavaScript code. So step 2. And this demo is also available online. So it's open source, this project, WC Toast. The link will be in the slides, and you can follow me on Twitter, and I will send out the link to this so you can actually go through it yourself. But just follow along for now, and we'll have some fun. So now we're going to go and look at Shadow DOM. How many folks are familiar with this kind of problem where someone sets like global color red and everything now is red, and you're like, oh, I wish you wouldn't affect my styles with your CSS? No, anybody run into CSS conflicts? I run into CSS conflicts all the time. I think that's all we talk about nowadays. That's why we have CSS in JavaScript. We have CSS modules. We have all these solutions to this stuff. And what Web Components offer is this idea of Shadow DOM. Oh yeah, sorry. The Shadow DOM, like that. And what that does is I can attach a shadow. And any element that you have, you can actually attach a shadow. You pass mode open. And I'm going to save this to a local variable. This.root equals this.attach shadow. And now inside of my shadow DOM, I can do hello world. Hello world. And I don't need this anymore. So with Shadow DOM, you can actually do it in the constructor because the browser will take the step of taking your Shadow DOM and injecting it into the DOM when connected. So here, we should have the same exact thing. Now, I created a Shadow DOM. Oh yeah, I should show the markup for this real quick, which is out here in my body tag, I set color red, and now everything is color red, even inside of my WC Toast. And even hello world, even though I set it inside of a Shadow DOM. And so Shadow DOM provides encapsulation, meaning like styles won't bleed out of it. But it still allows the cascading effects of styles to go into the Shadow DOM. I like to say it's like Hotel California. You can check in, but you can't check out. I got a few chuckles. Okay, a little bit of chuckles. A little bit more laughing makes me feel better as a speaker that my jokes are kind of funny. But that's okay, we'll work on them, or at least I'll work on them. So any global styles that you have will go into the Shadow DOM, but any styles that you add into the shadow root will not affect any global styles. And so what that means here is if I create a style tag inside of my Shadow DOM, and I say host, color green. So host is a new pseudo selector for shadow roots. Host will say this WC Toast, whatever my custom element is, the parent. It will apply styles to that. So now if I save this and reload my browser, my hello world is now green. Pretty cool. The other great benefit of this is I can convert this to a p tag and then wrap this in a p tag. And like you would never do this because now anywhere a p tag would be, like all the colors would be green. And here in my global index page, I have a p tag, which now you would think, oh my goodness, it's going to be green now. But no, it won't be. Because the Shadow DOM makes it so that any styles that are added inside of the shadow root does not affect anything else on the page. So now you can create components. You can add styling without having to worry about CSS conflicts. You can style h1 tags, div tags, p tags, however you want, and none of those styles being applied in that Shadow DOM will affect any of the global styles. It's a great way to distribute code from one site to another site without having to worry about conflicts. All right. Any questions? Feel free to shout out questions if you have any questions during this. So the next thing that you can do is rather than saying hello world, we can do slot elements. And slot elements are children. I don't know why they're called slots. That's probably a good question, like they're children that you put inside of slots. Who knows? And so now I can say RVA JavaScript, and I can save this. And the slot element will say any children that you put inside of my custom element, just take it and put it inside of my shadow root. And we can also put any tag in here that we want. So this could be an h1 tag. And we can drop it in here. And it will do the same thing, and it will just apply that inside of my shadow root. OK. So now we're going to go into custom properties. Is anybody using custom properties yet? So here is a custom property. These are native to the browser. They have nothing to do with web components. You can actually now define properties with CSS, and you don't have to use Sass. Again, everything I'm doing, there's no compilation happening on my machine, nothing being converted. Everything's running directly in the browser. So here I have this global variable, WCToast, that I'm setting to the color blue. And inside of my custom element, because I want to be able to pass styles into my custom element and penetrate the shadow DOM, I can now say variable WCToast, and I can set a default color of green. I can save this, and I can go back here. And now it will apply the blue because there's a global style for it. And if someone didn't set that variable, it will keep it the default one that I set of green. And this is really like good for colorblind testing if you're colorblind, because I have red and green and blue. Sorry about that. All right, let's go on to the next step. Step 2A. I had to create an A and a B to go more in depth about shadow DOM. So now we're going to talk about open and close. This is great. So in this attached shadow that I have here, there's two modes, mode open and mode closed. You should never ever use closed. I don't even know why they added it. They just did it because they like to mess with us as web developers and have options. But essentially what mode closed does is if we come back here, we inspect our shadow DOM. I'm going to blow this up, don't worry. If you inspect your element, you'll see this shadow root in here, and it will say closed, and if it was open, it would say opened. And essentially what that means is if you go into your console, when you select this, what is it? $0. Let me look up what the property name is. Shadow root. Shadow root. So there would be this property shadow root if it were opened, and it essentially means I can't access the shadow root. And if I just change it to open, then I'll have this property that I can have to access the shadow root. So now you see shadow root is open, and I can say shadow root, and now I get the document fragment, and I can change it. It's kind of weird. I don't know why it's there, but it allows you to really make it so that nobody can ever change your components. The other great part about shadow DOM is here inside of my component, I created an ID hello toast here. And if I do query selector at the global space, document.querySelector, and I look for hello toast, it won't find it because everything that's inside of your custom element, inside of the shadow DOM, is just there. It doesn't affect the global style scope. So what you have to do is you actually have to select the shadow root, and then you can query selector. And now I find the element. So basically, each shadow DOM is its own little DOM tree, its own little world. It's complete encapsulation for all the APIs. OK. One other pseudo selector that's added with the shadow DOM spec is this host context. So you can actually style your custom elements based on its parent context. So here I just have it changing color to white and the background. If its parent has a style of dark, and on my body tag I'm changing the background to black. So here I'm just going to change the body tag, add dark style, and then come back over here and reload. And you'll see that different themes can be applied to your custom elements. So this is a great way to theme your component, have different versions, and then if the parent has a different class, you can actually change what your component looks like. Whoop. All right, that's it for step 2A. Now we'll go into step 2b. In this, we're going to talk about slotted elements. And there's a lot that you can do with slotted elements. So here, I just changed my component to have some additional tags being added to it. So I have my h2 tag for my name. I have a title tag for my title at work, and then my company, which is another child of there. And what Shadow DOM allows you to do is it allows you to style elements that are passed into the slot as children by doing this pseudo selector slotted. So any child elements that come in, I can actually style them and apply styles to them. And there's some interesting things to note here is that you can only style top-level children or first-generation children. I guess that's a good way of saying it, first-generation children. So I can style this title tag because it's a first-level descendant, but I can't style this company tag because it's a child of a child. Does that make sense? If I take this company tag and I move it out of here, and I make it a first-level descendant of WC Toast, now the styles that I have here will actually apply to it, and it will apply the color green. So it actually made it a block-level element and made it the color green and brought it down. The other thing that happens with slotted elements is if you have styles that are in the global space, so here I have the title setting the color to white and the background to black, that actually overrides the slotted styles. So that has more specificity according to the CSS spec. So it won't apply the color orange and the border. Well, it combines the two styles. So it's going to apply the border top because it's not specified here. But the color is going to be white, which is what's happening here. And if I remove this global style, then it will use the styles that I have inside of my custom element here, which will make it orange with the same border top. Okay? The other cool part about slotted elements is you can actually change the order of the elements coming inside with children. So here I can say slot name, and in here I can say slot name equals name, which is weird. And what this means is the slot is now going to look for any children that have a slot name, and it's only going to copy those children over. So now if I reload this, it's only going to grab my name tag here. And the cool part is if you look inside of what the DOM is doing, you'll see that the shadow root shows all of these tags, but if you actually open up the shadow root, it copies the h2 tag into the shadow DOM. And so now there's probably like many questions from that. Slot is the default or the grab all selector. So if we go like this, and then you can actually move content around. So I can have all elements and then my name being at the bottom. So now it just rearranged the order of the children coming into the thing. And this is really powerful, right? So as JavaScript developers, if you're writing a function, you want to pass objects in because then the order of parameters doesn't matter. And the same thing with this is like the order of the DOM nodes that are going in as your children doesn't matter because you can rearrange them based on just pulling out slot names. So you can drop in a whole bunch of stuff and then change it. Go ahead. Yes, you can use the slot more than one time. So I'll demo that real quick, which is, okay, we have a slot name, and I can go down here and I can say slot equals name, and it will actually grab all the things with slot name and drop it in there. I'm going to get rid of the global one, and I got to slide left. And so now those two tags, which all have slot name, will be grabbed and put into there. So you can actually reuse the same tag.
Inside of your custom element, can you repeat that and I'll just print it twice?
That's a good question. Let's find out. That's why I really like the interaction with the audience, because it's like, does it? No, it does not. So who knows how the spec works? You just kind of got to try things. So it looks like it only copies it once. And I think that's everything for that section.
I got another question for you.
Sure.
The document styles, you said those overwrite the slotted styles. Does that still follow rules of specificity? Like if you had an ID style within the slotted, but a class inside the document?
That is a great question that I don't want to spend enough time going through. But yeah, I mean, if I was in my custom element, I want to just add an important in there and see if that does it. Because that would kind of answer your question, right? Which is, so right now we have the title here, and we say color white, and I got my title here, and I want to say exclamation mark important. Ooh, never do that, right? Never do that. But, whoa, okay, I got to make sure I have some kind of slot here. Go back to bringing that all in. Oh, yeah. So exclamation important inside of that does override the specificity. Woo, magical CSS properties. Yeah? I think you have to close the slot tag. I'm not sure if it's a self-closing. There's only certain tags in HTML that are defined as self-closing. Ooh, that's a good question. So I think let me see. So you could have like default text in here, right? And then if nobody puts any children inside of here, which I think that's children because that's just blank space, but let's see. Yeah, so that's blank space. But if your element doesn't have any children, then the default text might show up. Yeah. Woo, I know, right? Any other great questions? This is good. What happens if this happens? What happens if that happens? That's the benefit of live coding with questions. All right, so let's move on to step 3. So we're out of the Shadow DOM world. That was kind of like the deep dive of all the different wild and craziness that is Shadow DOM. And now we're actually going to get back to building the element. And here I'm just going to copy some styles to have my toast pop up. So this is all just CSS making the thing show up and being the border and the colors and things that I don't want to code on live on the stage. Okay, come on, go back down. So I have different styles being applied depending on what the class is on the tag. And so now I just want to add an open function. This dot classlist.add open. And I'm going to create a close function. So this is ES6 classes. I don't have to write the function word because who wants to type function over and over again? And so now I have 2 methods that I added to my class, WCToast, that I can call open. Let's go back to here. And I really like working with custom elements also because I can select it in here, and now I can go open up my console and I can say $0.open, and now my toast opens, and all it did was it called the open method and it added the class open, which then applied my CSS styles and made it come up. Question? Oh, $0. So $0 in the Chrome Developer Tools is whatever element that you have selected. So I clicked on my WCToast, $0 is now that. If I click on H1, $0 is now the H1 tag. So it's a shortcut in the Developer Tools. I could probably have a whole video on Developer Tools stuff. Okay, so custom elements, web components is done. We're going to how to use the Chrome Developer Tools. Oh, man. I'll apply for that talk next year, okay? Chrome Developer Tools. So now I can do $0.close, all the cool shortcuts that you should know as Chrome developer. I got to do classlist.remove. I should probably do that real quick, too. Remove. Remove open. Remove close. Not that that's that important. All right, so this is just showing that there's methods. This is just a tag. You can use any of the standard DOM APIs that you already know with custom elements. Like they all just work. The other thing is I added a close button that I want to add an event listener to it. So here I will go this.root to select my shadow DOM. Then I will query selector for my close button. And then I want to say add event listener. Add event listener for click. And when you click on this, I want to call this dot open, and I want to bind it to this, and boom. Now if ever, oh, no, I don't want to open, I want to close. That's right. So now if everything works correctly, don't need my debugger. Boom. So reload, elements. Now if I open this, I should be able to click the little thing, and it closes. So I'm not trying to show anything cool here. I'm just showing that everything works the same as you would with everything else. It's just now inside of a custom element, and you have shadow DOM. Yes? So since these are custom elements built into the browser, it's just DOM nodes. Like you would still do the same accessibility practices that you would normally do. So you can still add Aurelia tags or ARIA tags and everything else that you would do. So accessibility is exact same. All right, so now we're going to go on to the next step. Step 4, this is the last step before then we get back into the final piece. And step 4, this is the attribute change callback handler. So again, this is part of custom elements, is this attribute change callback. And you also have to set up this observed attributes. So this tells the browser that these are the attributes that I want to look for, which is duration. So whenever the duration attribute changes, it will call attribute change callback. And inside of my index page, I just want to add a duration here. And I want to set that to 3 seconds. And we're going to set it up so that our toast will automatically close after 3 seconds. So here we can say if the name equals duration. And you could use a switch statement here. I'm just using if statements. So don't fault me for that. Then I'm going to set a local variable of this dot duration equal to the new value that comes in. The great part is you get the new value and whatever the previous value was on the attribute. So you can utilize it. And then set timeout. I want to call this dot close dot bind to this after this dot duration times 1,000. And I only want to do this if this dot duration. And I will skip the squiggly brackets. So there you go. This should work. So now if everything works, it comes up, and in 3 seconds, it closes. Any questions? All right, how much time do I have? So we're at about a half an hour. Good. So now we can go back into the talk. Like I said, that's available at tinyurl.com/ComcastToast. You can check it out. I will send out the link to these slides. So you can just follow me on Twitter at ChiefCLL. Takeaways. So hopefully everybody's still with me, right? Everyone seems pretty engaged, so that's good. That's my daughter. She falls asleep whenever I talk to her. I don't know why. So I really like vanilla components with custom elements. We have a really important one in production. So this is our Xfinity Portal. This gets about 1 million users a day. And at the very top, that bar, we call it Polaris. It's a custom element that we actually distribute to all of our browsers. It weighs in about 20 kilobytes. And that 20 kilobytes, so you would load it up just by putting a script tag on the page. And then you add XC header as a custom element. And then you can add all these properties to it to customize it. And that same 20 kilobytes also includes this gigantic footer at the bottom. And that's all the CSS, styles, everything. And the great part is it's very easy to detect whether browsers have custom elements native or not. And you can add the polyfill. This is not using shadow DOM at all. The shadow DOM polyfill is about 20 kilobytes. It's quite large, but I don't think it's, I'm reaching the tipping point where it might be better to start using shadow DOM because the only browsers that are affected by it are Edge and IE 11, and you don't really have to worry about performance too much for them. So come to my next talk to find out more about that at 3 o'clock. But yeah, so it's really great because a lot of people are using it. It makes it easy for us to create a global header and footer that goes across all of our properties. So this is just one page, but we actually have a dozen different sites that are including this header written in Angular, React, Polymer, just Ruby on Rails, vanilla HTML, and all of them are loading in the same script tag and then just put the tag on the page. And then magic, right? Stuff just works. Yep. So this is actually open source, this Polaris toolbar, so you can see how to create a custom element and the scope of this. And we use a lot of like Webpack and Babel to build our custom element. So you can check out the source code for this, see all the attributes that are available. And that's at our Comcast Polaris page. Like I said, I will be tweeting these out. You can take pictures, or you can just wait for the slides. If you are going to be writing a vanilla custom element, for me, I made that really, really tiny because of the scale of it, millions of people downloading it every single day. So bytes matter to me. I really like performance. If you want to build a toast from scratch, I highly recommend that you check out the elix.org site. They have a lot of examples for building vanilla custom elements and base classes that you can use, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. The other great part is, like I said, that Polaris toolbar can be used with any existing framework. Because web components are being rendered by the browser, they have nothing to do with frameworks. They don't use virtual DOMs or anything like that. They just work because the browser is what's doing the work. If you're interested about getting custom elements working with a specific framework, Rob Dotson has a great talk on that. And he has a website, Custom Elements Everywhere, where he spent a lot of time getting custom elements to work with React and Angular and Vue and filing bugs against those projects to make it work flawlessly. And so I want to talk about frameworks because like the next question is like, well, should I just use custom elements for everything? And the answer is no. You probably will never use custom elements. You probably don't even have a need to use custom elements. You should continue using the frameworks that you're using today, or Aurelia, or some other newer, cooler frameworks. And the reason for that is because the frameworks will utilize these new APIs under the hood. You shouldn't have to change any of your practices. They will use the template tag. They will use the custom elements API. And there's a lot of cool stuff happening in this space. So Stencil is a great project if you want to create vanilla components. The other big one that I really want to talk about is Vue.js elements and Angular elements. Angular elements is kind of one of the big important ones. The problem with Vue.js elements right now and even Angular elements is if you build a custom element inside one of those frameworks and you give it to someone else, it has to load up the entire framework. So it is loading Vue.js or Angular as well, which is like a 50 kilobyte penalty for Angular, and Vue is about 20 kilobytes. However, with, and here's an example of doing it with Angular. So you get to use all the TypeScript, magical decorators, and things that Angular offers to build vanilla custom elements. Angular 7, I believe it is, will have the Angular Ivy renderer, and that's about 2 kilobytes in size. So Angular is really positioning itself that you can create custom elements and export them with only a 2 kilobyte overhead, using all the cool features of Angular. And that's going to be really powerful because then you can build up these great components that you're giving to all the other teams in your organization, and they can utilize them. And by the way, I work at Comcast, which has, I don't even know how many engineers, thousands of them, working on every different framework imaginable. So if you're at a small shop where you might have 20 developers and everyone's using React, don't build this in custom elements. Use React, use components in React, and just share those. The only time you really have a problem where you need custom elements is if you're Google, or probably not Facebook, because I guess they all use React. But if you're a large organization where you have so many developer teams building in all different stuff and you want to share something, use custom elements. Okay. And sharing components is not free. So these are my kids. They do not like to share. They like to play keep away around the table, especially when you have popcorn. But you need a team, right? If you're going to build up a component that you want to give to other teams, it's not free. It's not magical. You don't build it once and then nobody maintains it. You really want a dedicated team responsible for building UI widgets and components for other teams to consume. And that way they can test it and make sure everything's working great. If you like this talk, I'll have another talk right after this, so feel free to come talk about that. I'm going to talk performance optimizations, which I really like. Thank you for your time.